Great. Well, welcome everybody to this training on RAD conversions through a RAD Section 18 blend. Just to start with some introductions, my name is Will Levy with the Office of Recapitalization, work on the policy side of RAD, joined here by John Ardavini in the Transaction Division and Tamika Green in the Closing Division, as well as Rachel Kais behind me, also with the Policy Shop. Just to let folks know, please don't use any AI recording or transcription services. We're not permitted to do that. We promise, though, we will be recording this session and we'll distribute the recording as well as the slides afterwards. So thank you very much for understanding. Let's dive in. So RAD Section 18 blends, just to provide an overview for the uninitiated, under a RAD Section 18 blend, a PHA can convert public housing to one of two kinds of Section 8 contracts, either a project-based voucher contract or a project-based rental assistance contract, and increase the revenue to the project on a going forward basis. How does HUD do this? The background details is we're approving a portion of the units under Section 18 of the Act as a disposition, which triggers tenant protection voucher funding, and we're capturing that funding and using it to establish higher contract rents in the Section 8 contract. We do as much as we can to shield users from the complexity involved there and do as much of that behind the scenes, but just so you're aware of the background. Now, this higher funding, would you folks mind muting? Make sure we're muting just so the recording is effective for other folks. Thank you. This higher funding increases the income stream for a converting project, which will allow housing authorities to undertake more extensive renovations or redevelopment than is feasible with normal RAD rents. One of the beauties of RAD Section 18 blends is that all residents benefit from the robust RAD resident rights, including consultation and engagement prior to conversion, relocation rights, the right of return, and then ongoing rights that continue after a conversion. They're brought over from the public housing program, such as the rights to organize and grieve and receive advance notice prior to an adverse action, the ability to continue to participate in resident services programs like ROS and FSS and other things. Now, in a prior webinar, we covered the RAD Section 18 construction blends. This webinar is focused on the small PHA blend, which allows any PHA with 250 or fewer public housing units to qualify for the highest blend rate, which is 90% gets approved under Section 18 and 10% come out of public housing program through RAD. Again, a property can either convert to a project-based rental assistance contract, which is a contract directly with HUD, a 20-year contract directly with HUD, where HUD is making the payments to the owner, or to a project-based voucher contract, where it's a contract between the owner, the owner, and a housing choice voucher program administrator. The contract administrator is required to have at least 250 voucher units under its voucher ACC, unless there's a determination by the field office that the contract administrator has sufficient capacity. The other eligibility criteria for small PHA blends is that the PHA must have a repositioning plan submitted to us, showing how the PHA has plans to remove the remainder of its public housing properties from the public housing program. Just some background on small public housing programs. About 2/3 of all public housing authorities are actually small PHAs with 250 or fewer units. So over 2,000 housing authorities across the country. They control about 185,000 public housing units. Just to dive a little bit deeper into this, of these small PHAs, most of them don't have a voucher program. And so that's why this conversion option to project-based rental assistance, where HUD is the contract administrator and the PHA doesn't have to find another housing authority to partner with, is really important. So most of these small housing authorities don't have a voucher program that's representing about 104,000 public housing units around the country. the rest do, and they can choose to convert to a project-based voucher program and have their voucher agency, their voucher program administer the vouchers, or they could also choose to convert to a project-based rental assistance contract. When we do a small PHA blend, HUD produces a single blended rent schedule for all units resulting from the combination of the public housing assistance that's converting and the voucher assistance. For small PHAs, what this ends up meaning is nearly every project could achieve contract rents at or above the FMRs. 60% could even be eligible for contract rents above 110% of the FMR. Vast majority of cases, this is a nice revenue increase to stabilize the property and to support needed repairs. Well, as with all project-based Section 8 contracts, there are rent caps that are built into those program rules. For project-based rental assistance properties, that's 120% of the FMR, which can actually be higher if it's justified by a rent comp study. For the project-based voucher program, it's the lower of the reasonable rent or 110% of the applicable FMR. For this reason, again, it's a really good idea for housing authorities to look at project-based rental assistance contracts or PBRA contracts as an option because you might be able to get to a higher contract rent. How do you find your contract rents, you ask? Well, we've published a RAD rents lookup tool that's on our website. It has an easy way for housing authorities to look up their housing authority and select their property and look up what the rents might be. And after you have applied for RAD, we have a more refined calculation that is available through the RAD resource desk, and that produces a printout that you can share with financing partners who will want to know what are the contract rents that are going to be available at conversion. With Section 18 blends, it used to be that there were two contracts that resulted. Nowadays, though, we're on a single contract. All the units that result from a RAD and Section 18 blend, even though some units are leaving the public housing program through RAD and some units are leaving the public housing program through Section 18, they all end up on a single contract. Again, either a PBV or PBRA contract. All the contracts have all units under the contract are subject to the same rent schedule and follow the RAD requirements. Let's walk through some of what those RAD requirements are. So under the contract, as I said, all the subsidized units will be on a single contract. We sign the HAP contract at the start of construction or rehab. And that's really important because that means especially if you're doing an occupied rehab, you're getting subsidy payments during that rehab period to continue to support the operations of the property. The contract also provides for what's called rehab assistance payments that makes payments for unoccupied units that are still under construction. And we allow through RAD waiver authority, we delay physical inspections to occur only after the completion of the rehab or construction. So units don't necessarily need to have undergone an HQS or UPCS inspection in order for residents to continue to occupy the property after conversion during that rehab period. Public housing residents are not rescreened at conversion, even though they are new to the Section 8 program. That's also part of the RAD special RAD waivers. They're automatically admitted into the Section 8 program, which is a really important promise in order to help to protect residents and make sure that their RAD doesn't result in any adverse action. Contract rents are then adjusted annually over the term of the contract by an operating cost factor. And importantly, property cash flow is unrestricted. So you have your contract rents, properties will have their expenses. What comes out after that is not put into an operating reserve or residual receipts account. That cash flow is unrestricted. It is earned by the owner. I'm going to turn now to John, who'll walk through a couple of examples.
Thanks a lot, Will. Appreciate you covering the policy. Now let's see how that policy is put into practice. So there are a couple ways we're seeing PHAs utilize this type of RAD conversion for what we consider our small PHA cohort that are 250 units or less in the public housing program. One way is we're seeing PHAs approach this type of RAD conversion for a small PHA cohort is converting to stabilize the project. The project's physical needs have been recently addressed, usually either with public housing or other funding sources. In Quincy, Massachusetts, they opted into this type of conversion. They had, over the years, were able to address the physical needs of the project, either at unit turnover or as systems had to be replaced. And so when they came in and did their RAD conversion, they did have a limited scope of work, right? And the key to Quincy's conversion was to then stabilize. So how did that look? Well, if you wouldn't mind going to the next slide. Now, if I told you today that under the basic RAD rents, now remember those are sized at your current public housing funding levels, would net you say $5.3 million. But since you're a small PHA, converting under RAD could net you about $7.1 million a year tomorrow, a difference of $1.7 million in a revenue boost. How many of you would be interested in converting from public housing to this Section 8 platform? If you do the math over 20 years for Quincy, that's a $35 million difference. And I imagine with that increased revenue, both at the onset of conversion and over that 20-year term, a PHA can likely address any issues that come their way. And I think we're having just a technical issue. We're going to go back to sharing our screen, and I think we're back at it. Great. Perfect. Thank you. Now, Quincy was able to convert and stabilize the project because, again, they had put money into the project with their public housing funds. Property was in great condition. There's another path that we're seeing, and that is to leverage financing to address the needs of the property at conversion. And a prime example on the next slide is Ship Street. So Ship Street is City of Canton in Georgia. It had 70 total units between two public housing sites, one Jefferson Circle, one Ship Street. The Ship Street site actually had 15 acres. So the idea was, well, we can easily accommodate additional units on that type of acreage. Why don't we combine the unit counts, one-for-one replacement, right, a core component of the RAD program, and we'll build 70 newly constructed units on the Ship Street site. Ship Street site, it's hard to say, 3 S's in a row. So they demolished all those units, replaced one for one. And one of the reasons they were able to do this, right, obviously we're demolishing the units. The units weren't in great condition. Public housing funds haven't kept up historically with your capital needs, right? Through the blends and that increased revenue, they were able to leverage 9% tax credit equity, first mortgage debt with a commercial lender, state and local funds, and pull off a beautiful newly constructed development. Something to think about too is, as Will had laid out in the beginning, it's all right, is in Georgia, there are only so many PHAs that are also voucher agencies. So as Canton and their partners thought about what type of conversion they wanted to opt into, I believe this is actually the first PBRA conversion under the blend, if I'm not mistaken, too, as well, right? Which is neat. They were thinking, well, instead of partnering with another PHA who's going to be the contract administrator, that PHA would then admit applicants from the waiting list and manage that process. Well, why don't we do that for ourselves? HUD's going to be the contract administrator. We can manage that administrative process. That's a big net benefit for us. And something to think about long term too. And I'm not sure if this pushed them in that direction, but long term, as you're considering your choices between PBRA and PBV, something to think about is the 20-year outlook. And I know that's a long way away when you're converting, but 20 years do go by faster than you think. And it can also help you set up for long sustained success. As you're thinking about that 20 years, as you're going to that renewal, under PBRA, we have something called markup to market. So at the end of the 20 years, subject to appropriations, your rent's here, and say then the market's here. You get to market up to market. Now, the neat thing about that is HUD covers that cost. It funds that difference under the PBRA program. Under the PBV program, if you have a gap to jump to that market standard, the PHA is on the hook. That money has to come from their Section 8 HAP reserves for that first year to plug that gap. So that comes out of the PHA's pocket. So again, something to think about both at conversion, you can use it to leverage, right? Because if you have deep physical needs, look at this increased revenue you can use now to leverage a transaction, a financial transaction. And then the 20-year outlook, well, wow, this is great. I have a little more control over managing my wait list, over managing my emissions, and HUD's going to maybe fund that. HUD's going to fund that difference for me. Whereas on the PPV side, I have to fund that difference. So how does it all work? What's the process for a PHA blend, a small PHA blend? In all honesty, not that different from a regular RAD conversion. What does it take? You submit a RAD application for the entire project. You get what we call a commitment to enter into a housing assistance payment contract. It's your ticket to the RAD program. Once you get that chat, we automatically assign you HUD free technical assistance to the Housing Authority. These are folks who are in the industry, know the program and development backwards and forwards, and can help you envision what you need to do. You'll then develop your property plans. Was I able to keep up with my needs? And it will be more of I'm just going to convert to stabilize. Do I have deep needs and I actually have to leverage financing, right? So let's develop those property plans. Do I need to transfer assistance to a new location because my location just doesn't work anymore? I have an area of opportunity I have under site control. You'll have to amend your PHA plan and consult with the residents. The PHA plan is well, you have to note both the RAD and Section 18 actions. So that's a little bit of a difference. Under RAD, it would just be RAD. You will have to procure your property due diligence. Your capital needs assessment is going to dictate your RAD conversion. The more needs your capital needs assessment show, the more likely you're going to have to leverage financing, which is okay, right? We have higher rents now, right? You can actually leverage a pretty decent amount of first mortgage debt with these new rents that you'll be seeing. And you'll get your environmental reports. After you know how you're going to go tackle your development plans, you'll try to leverage your financing sources, right? And after you leverage your financing sources, and next slide, and when your deal is real, you'll walk in the door for what we call a concept call, which is just essentially a reality check of saying, okay, taking a peek at your package, looks good, here's some feedback for you to consider, and then why don't you go ahead and come and submit your financing plan. When you submit that financing plan, again, this is under the RAD program and the RAD resource test. So we're gonna drive the process, but there are some Section 18 items required, right? Like the local government support letter, but it's all part of the process. We've really tried to streamline this and make it as simple as possible. And I think as you're thinking about, right, as you're putting your RAD Section 18 blend transaction together, is that PHAs can contribute public housing capital and operating funds into the development budget, right? And that's an important fact under RAD. We see this all the time as gap financing or a single source of financing if folks are coming in to just stabilize the project upon conversion. Once the PHA is in with the financing plan, HUD does internal coordination. This is all behind the scenes, nothing that you have to do. We create the Section 18 application from the submitted materials. You do not need to submit a separate Section 18 application. We do that all internally. After the review, generally about 60 days, give or take, we'll issue what we call our conditional approval or RAD conversion commitment. That then triggers our colleagues at the Special Application Center to issue their Section 18 approval. Again, all done internally. You don't have to do anything to get that Section 18 approval letter. And then after we issue the conditional approval, you'll work with the closing team, right? And you'll have about around 60 days, give or take, to submit that closing package, get it reviewed, and convert. Again, this is an internal measure. We now coordinate all the tenant protection voucher funding.
Take it from here. Thanks, John. So for closing, it's really just business as usual. Are these my live notes? Sorry.
No.
Okay. Okay. Sorry. So for closing, it's just business as usual. You're assigned a closing coordinator, field counsel. The closer will introduce themselves and just talk through what closing looks like for the housing authority. You'll submit your closing package for review. And once the deal has firmed up a little bit and we understand when closing is established and we have an idea of what the HAP effective date is, the closing coordinator will enter that information in the resource desk for you. Based on that HAP effective date, the resource desk will calculate what your TPV funding would be, and then they'll take the initiative to request funding on your behalf. So no need to be in touch with the field office. The closing coordinator will handle that next step for you. What's required here is just to make sure that you've completed and submitted the HUD 52515, Again, once that dollar amount has been requested and the amount is firmed up, we'll enter that amount in your single HAP contract. We move, as Will mentioned earlier, we moved to the single RAD HAP contract. It includes all the RAD units and the Section 18 units. We'll get to closing. We'll release the DOT, and then we'll record the RAD use agreement. Once those documents have been recorded and released, then the units will be removed and released from PIC. And then you'll close on any construction financing if applicable. During the construction stage, your HAP contract stays in place. So whatever your HAP effective date is, and while the property is in construction, the units are eligible for subsidy payments, as Will mentioned earlier. And then the construction period we've seen ranges from 2 years to 3 years, sometimes even 4 years. And so once you're at construction completion, this is where you've ensured that all the work that was in your RCC has been completed. You'll go on the resource desk and submit your completion package and ensure that all the work has been done and that all the residents were returned back to the property. And tie it up in a bow.
Thanks, Tamika. Thanks, John. So I think we'll have time for some questions. We'd love to hear what's on your mind, but just to flag a couple of things before we go that way. We will make this recording available on the resource desk and the slides. We also have an upcoming RAD office hours or webinar for very small PHAs with 50 units or less, which is really exciting because they not only get these benefits of the small PHA blend, but we also have a streamlined process for those housing authorities to make it as easy as possible. So we're really looking forward to that session and hope you tell your peers and or you might be in that category yourself. And also want to point you to a few key resources as you're starting out. Again, there's that RAD rents lookup tool where you can quickly look up what your contract rents would be and understand the revenue impact of a conversion. All of the rules around RAD are contained within the RAD notice. If you just Google it, the RAD notice, you'll find the most updated version. The resource desk, the RAD resource desk has all sorts of available trainings for PHAs and partners. And then if you have questions, you can always reach out to rad@hud.gov, and they're great at answering those questions. Or if you just want to ask for a call and a conversation, we're always happy to do that too. So let's go to questions. If folks wouldn't mind raising your hand, and we will call on you in the order in which you are. We see your hand raised. Okay, let's go to Naomi.
Hi, everyone. I hate raising my hand and asking questions because I know you guys get tired of hearing from me. But I'm glad that you guys are having another training, and thanks for featuring Riverview, our project. I'm really happy to see that. My question is more post-conversion related. As you know, we do a lot of these RAD Section 18 blends, especially with the smaller PHAs. And one of the things that we have run into recently is understanding the operational aspects of inputting the information into VMS, the voucher management system, ensuring that that information is appropriately reflected in VMS. And then even recently, one of the PHAs we worked with, you have a cap on the maximum tenant protection voucher amount under these blends that the housing authority can receive. That TPV amount is based on a combination of things, including understanding what your projected tenant rent portion is. The challenge that a recent housing authority received is their tenant rent portion decreased significantly. And so they essentially were in a shortfall type of situation because the voucher amount that had been allocated under the RCC and the amended CHAP rent schedule was maximized at the higher tenant rent portion, right, and didn't account for a tenant decrease and an increase needed for HAP. So I say all that to have two questions. One, would it be possible to get from FMC or FMD a step-by-step for converting the PBVs under the RAD blend or converting two PBVs under the RAD blend with instructions on VMS? Because that has really been a challenge, is understanding how we need to input this into VMS beyond the guide that's out there. And second, is there any way that if tenant rents decrease, housing authorities are able to access shortfall funding to offset that decrease in these blends in that initial year so that they can see a higher TPV amount received for that initial year of conversion? Did that make
Thanks,
sense?
Amy. Yep. So first thing, just to make sure you and others are aware of, we've updated the funding instructions guide for RAD conversions in the last couple of months. That has a lot of great information on how funding works during the year of conversion and then in the year after conversion. So first look there. We'll take a look to see if the VMS instructions are in there, but
Yeah, I didn't see them in there, Will and John. That's why we were asking the questions because VMS is not explicitly understood.
Yep.
And when I look at the VMS guide hasn't been updated to catch up with the blends either.
Yep. Okay, good. Thanks. It's a good catch. On the other question about the adequacy of the TPV funds, send us something in around that.
Okay.
Depends on when it occurred, but one of the things that we've done in the last year is have much more coordination around the amounts of TPV funding that is issued through blends so that it better reflects the actual costs that we anticipate. So I think that's helping a lot, but there's still possibility that, as you say, weird things can show up. And maybe the funding amount it doesn't quite work. So Leah, let us know. We'd be happy to explore that a little further with you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, let's go to Lisa Petrosky.
Hi, how's everyone today? My question is, if you're a small PHA, do you have to do the transaction and close out your public housing? So if I have 200 units, can I do 100 at the 90-10 blend and then the second 100 as a different transaction with the 90-10 blend? Or do I have to close out the authority with that blend?
Lisa, it's a great question. You can absolutely do it in stages. We do see PHA do it site by site. You have 220 units, right? 4 sites, you do 4 different transactions. The one thing that is going to be required when you submit your first transaction is something called a repositioning plan. And we have guidance and a template that we can share if you want to email us directly how that can look. It's really straightforward. Essentially, it's just saying, on this property, I'm anticipating to do X. On this property, I'm anticipating to do Y, right? Kind of lines out the development plans for each one with a bit of a timeline. We don't hold you to that timeline. We know things get pushed back. But yeah, as long as you're under 250 units, you're eligible for the 90-10 blend at that increased revenue, and you can do this step by step.
Thank you very much. That's good.
Great question.
Let's go to Cheryl.
Hi, my name's Cheryl Hartnett. I'm Executive Director for a housing authority in Narragansett, Rhode Island. Very small, 9 public housing units. We do have a voucher program. So my question is, I have 2 questions. Number 1, it will be on vacation for your January 13th very small public housing RAD conversion. Will that be recorded?
Yes.
Okay.
And we're
Am I?
Sorry, go ahead.
My second question is the last time I attended a RAD conversion session was a very long time ago, and at that time, housing authorities could not maintain ownership of the properties once they were converted. Is that still the case?
That is not the case. Conversions can be structured in a number of different ways. Sometimes the ownership changes, particularly if they're using tax credits and might go into a tax credit partnership. But even then, the housing authority might be a general partner, a managing member. But there's no requirement that the housing authority has to exit ownership. In plenty of RAD conversions, the housing authority continues to maintain full ownership of the property.
It's a cornerstone of the program too. You have to have a public or nonprofit ownership or control.
Great, thank you. I think the last time I went, it had to be converted. It had to be converted to a nonprofit or transferred to a nonprofit in order to take part in RAD conversion. So that shows how long ago it was that I actually tuned in last. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks for joining. Let's go to Janae. Janae, if you're talking, we can't hear you. Janae, maybe try dropping off and logging back in, and when we see you come back, just raise your hand again. We'll try you then. Okay. Okay, Beth.
Hey there. This is Beth Brown with the Gainesville Housing Authority. I have kind of a post-closing operational question as well. And Will, I know I had been emailing you, but it's kind of about how we I guess, complete the voucher for our initial couple of months, because we're also under a delayed HAP contract. So we have RAP, we have pass-through, and we have HAP. And we use a third party to help us with this, but they're not quite sure how to, mostly the pass-through, units that are on there. And we're not quite sure how HUD wants to see that.
Thanks, Beth. I think I'm going to need some help from some of our colleagues in asset management on that question that I was waiting on. So apologies, we haven't gotten back to you yet. And unfortunately, I don't think we'll be able to help you on this call. But thank you also for being one of the case studies.
Yeah, no problem. And then one other, and this is more of a comment, or maybe it's a question. We're doing a Ross grant, and now it's eligible under this NOFA to include our PBRA, and PBV units on there, but they didn't really contemplate these blends in their NOFA, and they're considering our PBV units, well, as PBV units, and maybe they are, but under the blend, so I can only apply as a housing authority for, well, we're under the 80% units, but 80% of the units that are there. Like under this conversion, are they still considered PBV, or do they actually convert to PBRA and considered PBRA since it's under a PBRA contract?
Right. So the distinction is when the blend occurred. So for some of your properties, for example, Beth, you are under a single RAD HAP contract.
Yes.
But for some of the older blends you've done in years past, you have one RAD HAP contract and one regular project-based voucher contract, they're legally distinct. So it's an unfortunate little nuance here, but that's going to impact their response because a regular project-based voucher contract is not eligible to renew a Ross grant that had been provided under public housing, but a RAD, project-based rental assistance, or project-based voucher contract is. So it's creating some complexity in your case We're in discussions with their office, with the office that runs that, around clarifying eligibility rules.
Okay, because they're
I'm
telling
not,
us we're eligible under the blend because it is under one PBRA contract, but they want us to use, they're saying the definition of those units are PBVs. Even if it's under one PBR, even if it's under the PBRA contract, or is that correct? Because it
if
dramatically
it's,
changes how we
yeah, no,
apply.
if it's under the RAD PBRA contract, it should be fully eligible. But if it's only that case where if some units are under a RAD contract and some units are under a project-based voucher contract, that's where there's some issues.
Okay, well, they're saying they're eligible, but they want me to apply for them as PBVs, which is fine, but that totally changes who applies. Rather, do you get what I mean?
Yep.
I don't mean to belabor it, and we
No,
can talk
yeah,
offline,
let's, Beth, you can also send us a separate note on this, just kind of laying out which properties you're
Okay.
applying for and what the HAP contract breakdown of those are, if you don't mind.
Yep, thank you, appreciate it.
Sure. Chris.
Hi, everyone. I'm Chris with King County Housing Authority. We manage a small PHA that has 80 units that we're looking at converting to RAD. I had some questions about the mobility vouchers. So this smaller housing authority is outside of our voucher jurisdiction. But I was assuming that we would continue to manage the HAP contract after conversion to RAD PBV. I'm wondering if there's other similar housing authorities that have gone through this and how they handle the mobility vouchers.
Got it. So you are managing this housing authority, and then you're thinking of converting the 80 units. You would administer the project-based voucher contract?
Correct.
And you are wondering how to manage the choice mobility options so that residents, after a period of living there, can request a tenant-based voucher.
Correct.
Yeah, we could probably come up with some other housing authorities who might be in that same or a similar situation. Would you mind, Chris, also sending us a separate note on that?
Yeah, I can send an email.
Thank you.
I want to talk about PBRA.
Sure, yeah. Johnny.
Yeah, Chris, something else just to think about is under PBRA, you can request something called a good cause exemption for choice mobility, which is often granted. And then choice mobility would not be an option that you would have to service under PBRA. So there is another option there. I know PBRA is a little different, but it's something that can also, if you're worried about choice mobility and the impact to your voucher program, might be able to help.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Wilbert.
So, can you hear me? Sorry about that.
Yes.
Okay, so I have 64 plus units available for conversion, and we've been doing major capital improvements with CFP funding. Are capital improvements required for a conversion? Do we need to do a CNA?
Yes, you'll need to do a capital needs assessment because as a basic condition of conversion, we want to make sure that the capital needs of the property are addressed, right? And so if you've been doing work with capital funds and the property's in fine condition, the capital needs assessment will show there's not much work. Maybe there's some additional things you need to do, but maybe not too much. And you could do a pretty direct conversion without taking out new financing. Or you might find with the capital needs assessment, actually there's a bunch more work to do, or that you want to do, that you want to really modernize the property more significantly and take out debt or use equity, tax credit equity. And that would be your choice. But at a minimum, we require for a property to convert that it addresses what's found in the capital needs assessment.
And we need to do an environmental review under this blend as well?
Yes.
Okay, and I would imagine that these would be new vouchers you would be issued, right? Not using existing vouchers.
Right.
Is that correct?
We'd be providing new funding for the contract.
Okay, and for this type of conversion, if the housing authority is retaining ownership, would we need to hire legal counsel for this conversion?
To help support the closing. I'll turn
No,
to Tamika.
assuming there's no work, there's no improvement, there's no financing.
So Tamika,
I
if you
guess,
want to talk, yeah, I'm going to turn to Tamika Green, who manages all of our closings, where oftentimes that's where legal counsel is most often engaged. So
Yeah.
Tamika, can you speak
Yeah.
to what you see?
I would recommend hiring legal counsel for the closing piece.
okay, because you gotta transfer the DOT, right? Gotta get a
Yes,
release in that.
releasing the DOT, adding the use agreement. So we would recommend
The
hiring
use,
legal
yeah,
counsel just
okay.
to review those documents and the ownership structure. But I think it's more of on the financing question, maybe is what he's asking, like a consultant.
As you get your capital needs assessment back, it's one thing. I think if you're showing low needs, we've seen other housing authorities try to tackle that on their own. But as you see those needs grow, that's where we do see housing authorities looking for either a consultant or affordable housing attorney, a partner to kind of help them through thinking through what's my next step, how do I have to tackle these needs. So
Right.
it'll depend on how your due diligence comes back. If there's any environmental items that come back that you might need some help with too, that you might have to address. But both, I think, on the transaction side and the closing side, support is always a welcomed.
And one last quick question. So these costs, can those be financed through the CFP funds as part of the conversion?
Yeah, it's very common, especially for small PHAs where you're converting your last public housing property, to use all your remaining capital funds, operating reserves, and use it to cover the conversion budget, the development budget, which might just be legal fees or the cost of environmental reports and things like that, and not actually need to be used for any construction activity. Oftentimes, a few things are found in the capital needs assessment that need to be addressed, but that they're low cost things. Even when PHAs think the property is in great condition, there's always something that's found, as you can expect. But yeah,
Okay.
you can use all your funds there.
All right, great. Thank you so much.
Thanks for the call. Now let's go to Mel.
Hi, thank you so much. First thing is I sent a request on Friday to get access to the RAD application, and I'm curious what that process is. I didn't get a confirmation email or anything, and I know sometimes these things are done by paper mail.
Oh, to actually apply for RAD.
Right, like I need access to the application site, and that's what I'm waiting for so that we can apply.
Got it. So you're getting account access.
Yes.
Got it. So yeah, if you don't hear back, I would say if it's Friday, so give it another day or two. And if you don't hear back, you can email the resource desk, go on the RAD resource desk and email them directly and just ask for a status update. But you should get that sooner rather than later. That's pretty straightforward protocol to establish.
Okay. And we are anticipating that when our capital needs assessment comes back, that we're going to be able, like we've just been talking about, to pay for all of the immediate necessary updates with funding that we already have. So does that in any way streamline the process since we're not looking for any external funding at that conversion time?
Yeah, it can, right? Because then what happens if you would have to leverage financing, then you have to find partners. Is it just debt only? Is it debt and tax credits? That just, right, extends your time frame for sure, because you have to find those funding sources to cover those needs. If it's more of we've done a good job taking care of the property, we have enough money to cover, the near term needs and maybe year 1 and 2 in that capital needs assessment. and do a little bit of a scope of work, right? That does make it a more streamlined, I would say, approach. But capital needs assessment will dictate all of that of how that looks.
Okay, but there's no like streamlining specifically that happens. It just shortens all the processes that still have to happen.
Right, because you cut down on the development timeline if you're just doing it all yourself.
Perfect. And then the last question is around environmental reviews. I am not completely clear on when we need our local planning department to do it versus when HUD does it. And this is especially important for us because our county planning office is very unresponsive to our needs. We've actually tried to engage with them for an environmental review so that we can possibly carve out some vacant land so that we can build on it. And that process hasn't gone anywhere for like a year and a half. So our concern is that we're going to have everything on our end done to move forward with conversion. And if the county is not doing their piece with the environmental review, we're just going to be dead in the water.
Appreciate that. So I think the good news for you then is all RAD public housing transactions are subject to what we call Part 50. Those reviews are actually done by HUD staff.
So, that's amazing.
Yeah. You'll want to go ahead and procure an environmental vendor, right? And ensure they know the RAD and Part 50 protocols. We have a system called Heroes where it's all uploaded to. We review all the laws and authorities associated with, and we do that review in-house. And if there's no work or no ground disturbance, those reviews become much more streamlined.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
So, Danny. Danny, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Good afternoon. I was interested in knowing we have a small housing authority that has 30 studio apartments, and with their conversion, they would like to eliminate the 30 studio apartments and do new construction of 30 one-bedroom apartments. So I was wondering, how does that impact funding? Is that even though they're still doing a one-for-one replacement, they are actually going from a studio to a one-bedroom, but this is new construction?
Sure. We will establish contract rents and provide funding adequate for those one-bedroom rents that you're not kind of locked in at the subsidy associated with the studio rents.
That is an excellent response. Thank you so much.
Okay, Joy.
Hello. And we have 197 public housing units and 159 HCV vouchers. We are looking at doing our public housing. We want to convert that to PBV in different phases. So our first one is 18 units, and we were wanting to like demo dispo those units and rebuild with like tax credit help with that to do the construction. My question is there a difference between a RAD Section 18 for small housing agencies and just a Section 18 demo dispo?
Yeah, thank you very much, Joy, for asking that question. In your scenario, you're planning to demolish and rebuild the property, and you have a voucher program. So you have a program where HUD could provide new vouchers. I think some of the key considerations for you are A, does the property qualify for Section 18? Under Section 18, the most common justification is if it shows that it's obsolete. So it requires getting a physical needs assessment that shows that your rehab costs exceed a certain threshold. And sometimes that takes a little bit of time for housing authorities to procure and then to demonstrate to the Special Applications Center. And if it and it doesn't always go result the way housing authorities expect. So if there is some question, if you haven't started down that path yet, or there's some question about whether it's going to qualify, the property might be in okay condition, but locally, it's not the property that you want to be operating for the long term. That means it may not necessarily pass that Section 18 test. Nice thing about blends is you don't qualify based on the condition of the property. This property will qualify just because you're a small PHA for the highest blend rate. And now we're able to offer contract rents that are basically the same as if you went through Section 18 and then developed the property through the project-based voucher program. Some other advantages we have there are doing it through a blend are you can use capital funds or operating reserves in the development budget. As doing new construction, you're likely to have some gaps there that need plugging. There's an ability for payments to be made throughout the construction period, which can again also help the development budget. And not to mention all the resident rights, so the ability for residents to return to the new property once constructed, and the rights, and they won't be rescreened at the time of conversion. Those are some of the considerations. I'll turn back to you to see if you have any questions on that. But the good news is, in the blends, you've got a really good option to get it done. You might still find that, hey, you'd rather go through Section 18 and do it through the regular project-based voucher program. That's fine. You're doing great work. However you get it done is wonderful. There's just a few. You just want to understand the differences a little bit better. And so doing a little bit more homework is probably a good idea here. But yeah, let me turn back to you to say, any questions on what we've said so far that you want to explore a little further?
Yes. So with with what we're looking to do, we're wanting to add units. So so I think that from what we've looked at, we can show that it would cost more to rehab than it would to build new and to add the amount of units. We're adding 42 units is the plan. So we're replacing the 18 units with a building of 60, or 3 different buildings of 60 altogether. Does that change anything if we're adding units to that?
That won't affect your Section 18 application and whether you qualify. They're just going to look at if it's just Section 18, they're just going to look at the condition of the current property, not your future plans as of today. Let me just say another thing that's worth doing right now is if you can access this RADRents lookup tool, go for it. If you can't, ping us. We'll send you the link. Look up your housing authority and see what are the rents available through the small PHA blend. Because if indeed the contract rents are stronger, if you just did a regular project-based voucher contract, that's fairly compelling, right? You'll be able to better finance the actual development of those replacement units. If the rents are comparable, you're back in this mode of, well, let's look at the other considerations. But yeah, as a first step, I'd say take a look at we can work with you to just to quickly compare the rents that you'd be able to get through either path to see if there's a difference there.
Okay, real quick, also something earlier in the seminar that was said. So if we have only 159 HCV vouchers, if we did go, like, for example, if we did choose to go Section 18 on this, or the RADSection 18, would we be able to manage our own PBVs in this new property since we're under 250 on the HCV side? Or would we partner with another housing agency?
Typically, in most cases, we find that the field office takes a look at your voucher program and says, are you managing it pretty well? Do you have the capacity to take on this new project-based voucher contract? And if so, there can be an exception to that rule of the PHA needing to have 250 or more voucher units in their program. Most likely the answer is yes, and we can also, we can work together with you in the field office to get that figured out beforehand, so you're not having to find out too late in the process.
Enjoy. We've seen that asked a number of times and that being granted a number of times. So it's not an exception anymore. It's probably more regular process at this point.
Okay, great. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate it.
Perfect. Joy. Okay, let's go to Sean.
Hello. We have a portfolio-wide award, and we're getting ready in the next 3 or 4 months to close the deal that will put us below 250 units. And we are going to do the Section 218 RAD blend. However, how much of the pre-development, pre-financing plan work can we actually do prior to the units that are currently in PIC coming out to put us below that?
You can do all your due diligence now, right? You want to get a sense of how you're going to tackle. Do you need to redevelop? Are the units in good condition? So, getting your due diligence to see what you're looking at, right, is going to then take time.
I'm talking about environmentals, the CNA. Can you go ahead and do all that stuff in advance?
You can. They do have shelf lives, so you may need to get those updated, right? But at least you then gain a sense once you do that due diligence, you'll kind of know what you have and what transaction you're going to have to put together. So yeah, there's nothing holding back from getting the due diligence now as you're essentially closing out a transaction that takes you under that 250.
Okay, thank you.
And Sean, let me answer your question a different way to say it's when you submit the financing plan that we confirm your eligibility for the blend. So it's not, you can apply now, submit an application for RAD for that property now. We're going to give you a regular chap. You start doing your due diligence with environmental and other things. You get these other units out of PIC, and then you submit your financing plan for this next property. That's when we'll say, oh yeah, you're under 250 units and are eligible for the small PHA blend.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Sure. Okay, back to you, Chris.
All right, thanks. So my other question was around very small PHAs with 50 or fewer units. My understanding is that they can convert with 100% TPVs. Is that accurate?
So under Section 18, one of the available criteria is any PHA with 50 units or less can go out through Section 18 as a Section 18 disposition. That's out of RAD. And yes, that's still on the table. They can just go through Section 18. They don't need to show the property is obsolete, and get Section 18 approval, receive vouchers, oftentimes then project base those vouchers back at the site, and go out that way. Is that what you're referring to, Chris?
Yeah, that's what I'm referring to.
It's also
with
possible to do it. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Okay.
Oh, so my question is, with our repositioning plan, if we had a property that was, fewer than 50 units, could we convert all of our portfolio over, except for the last property, to a small PHA blend, and then do Section 18 on that last property?
Yeah, it's very common in the repositioning plans that John referred to earlier that the PHA says, I'm going to do a blend for this property and a blend for this property, and I'm just going to do Section 18 for my last property. Or I'm going to start with Section 18 to take care of my scattered site units, which is the strategy we see often. So yeah, the repositioning plan can include whatever tools are work best for you.
And Chris, come back in January and listen to us on the 50 and under for RAD, because there'll be some useful information there as well you might want to listen to.
Absolutely. Will do. Thank you.
To the woman who said that this eyeliner was off for 5 days.
Hey, Mike,
I want to say
you're on.
Yeah, hi. Thank you for this information. It's great. So we have a total of 70 units at two different locations. One is a 40-unit family development, which I would say is in good condition. And we have a 30-unit elderly and disabled property, which I would say is in excellent condition. So I heard earlier that we could split this up and do two different developments at a time, taking the 30-unit one, which is in excellent condition, which requires, truthfully, no capital improvements because we've spent our capital money efficiently and the property is in excellent condition. And then the 40 family units who also spent quite a bit, all of our capital funds, updating the property, the heating systems, the roofs, the windows. It's in very good condition, not quite as good as the elderly. But my question is we have capital money available, but we also have quite a bit of money in reserves. Do we have to spend all of our reserves and all of our capital money before we can convert, say, the 30-unit development very quickly?
Thank you for that question. No, in RAD, we have special waiver authority that allows the housing authority to bring those capital funds or operating reserves with you in the conversion. So oftentimes we see, in your case, you might use those funds to pay for some of the legal fees at closing, and then you might use the balance to establish a new reserve at the property.
Right.
And now it's part of the reserve for that Section 8 property going forward. So you don't have to artificially spend the money down before you leave public housing.
Okay, that's good news. Second question is, can I get some, a name or some guidance off of somebody who I could work with individually to get sort of the ball rolling, for lack of a better phrase? We think that particularly the 30-unit elderly development would pass any capital needs assessment very, very well. And then would like to get the ball rolling after that on the family development, which probably would have a few issues that we could work on with our own money. So we wouldn't need to take out any lender or any partner or anything. But will there be somebody that we could contact to work individually, specifically with us to get this done, sort of quickly?
So sure, are you looking for a consultant to work with and kind of work you through all the HUD steps and processes? Is that the kind of thing you're looking for?
100% yes.
Okay. So we have technical assistance providers that can provide you a more limited set of help. But I think what you're looking for is, to get somebody on board, have some short-term capacity that can walk you through the whole process. We can't recommend anyone specifically. Oftentimes, housing authorities will put out a quick RFP for a RAD consultant and select one that way. We can't recommend any specific partners, though.
All right, one quick question. Is there any, are you prohibited by selecting somebody on your own, or is there a process that you have to go through to get pricing for that?
So if you are going to pay them while still in the public housing program, you'd be following public housing procurement rules.
Okay.
But if this isn't usually the case for consultants, but if anyone who is going to get paid after the conversion, you don't have to follow public housing procurement rules. So not applicable in your case, but if a housing authority were procuring a developer, the developer, that procurement wouldn't necessarily need to follow public housing rules because the developer is usually not paid until the closing happens and fees are paid out at that point. But if you're just getting a consultant, they're probably going to want to get paid now or along the way. And you'd be following public housing procurement rules.
Timing is everything.
All right, guys, it's 2:05. We are over time because you've had such wonderful questions. Let's just take one more question from Kate. And then for others, Chris, Tazzy, Michelle, feel free to email us your questions, or if we need to get on a call with you guys individually. That goes true for anybody on this call. If you want to reach out to us because your interest was piqued and you want more information, we try to make ourselves as accessible as possible. But Kate, bring us on. What do you got?
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm actually a development partner with the PHA, and I had a question just about the small PHA designation. The PHA I'm working with is 267 units. So, is that 250 threshold a hard threshold, or would you ever consider a waiver if we're so close to the?
It is a hard threshold. What we often see is a housing authority finds some units, finds a way to get themselves below the 250, as you might have heard from some others on the call. My favorite way is see if the housing authority has a few scattered site units and get those out through Section 18. What else?
Also, if you guys are redeveloping and financing construction blends, you may not need to be a small PHA. You may hit our certain bands and get that revenue stream from certain bands through the construction blend. So if you're doing a tax credit transaction, usually you hit a pretty high hard cost in relation to hard construction costs, and you might hit a certain band of 90-10 that gets you there anyway. Your question, Kate.
Kate, that cover it?
Email address? Should they just reach out to RAD?
The rad.gov is the best way to reach out to us, and that email box is highly responsive, and we'll direct your questions if it's a conversation you're looking for or something specialized. So, thank you everybody for joining this call. This was a really robust conversation, really satisfying for us, and hopefully really helpful for you all as well. Please feel free to reach out with further questions, and we look forward to engaging with you.
Come back next month, y'all.
Take care.